Awesome. Brent Kesler, thank you so much for coming on the Infinite Banking Radio podcast, man. Thanks for your time. What's going on?
Awesome, Nolan, man. Thanks for having me. Yeah, good stuff. I'm excited to share with your audience.
Man, I've been following you for the past couple of years, you and Chris Nagel over at the Money Multiplier. You guys have such an amazing business and model. And the fact that you guys are Nelson Nash purist, you're into doing the infinite banking concept the right way. Kind of take us back from the beginning on, who you are, how you kind of got into this, what you stumbled upon, and then what you guys do for your clients.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, of course, I mean, right. So the thing we do is 100% infinite banking. That's all we do. We're 100% whole life policies and mutual companies that pay dividends, and we do very little term insurance. The only time we ever do term is if, a person just needs convertible term or something like that. So we usually refer all of that out as well. But yeah, the whole idea is for people to start this concept in their life and to be able to use these policies the way that Nelson Nash talked about it in his book, Becoming Your Own Banker. So, just to give you a little bit of backstory of myself, I'm actually a chiropractor. I no longer practice chiropractic anymore. I had 5 clinics in the Kansas City area, and I sold my last clinic in 2017. I now live down here in Port Orange, Florida, about an hour east of Orlando. My wife and I became empty nesters back in 2017. And, we decided to get out of the cold. So we moved back to my home state of Florida, right? But then anyway, my kids followed me down here, so I don't know. We could have probably left earlier. So, but yeah, just to take you back to the concept and how I got introduced to it, I was actually at a chiropractic conference back in 2006. And I heard this guy talking about the infinite banking concept. And I said, man, that stuff looks really, really good, but it just seems too good to be true, right? You've seen stuff like that before where it looks good, but it seems too good to be true. Well, that was me back in '06. So I did nothing. I actually bought this book here called, Becoming Your Own Banker by
Yep.
R. Nelson Nash. And I brought it home and I took it home and I actually did nothing with it. I did nothing with the book at all. So I go back to another conference about 2 years later, and about 10 or 12 of my colleagues that were at that previous conference are now at this new chiropractic conference. The only difference between them and me is they started the process in their life. They implemented this concept that Nelson teaches. So at this new conference, they were all going up, ranting and raving, like, oh my gosh, isn't this banking concept the most powerful thing ever to build, keep, and create wealth, to pay off debt, recapture, recycle money? They were going on and on and on about it, So I thought to myself, there has to be something to this, right? There's no way 10 or 12 of my colleagues are lying to me, maybe one or two, but not 10 or 12. So I came home at that time. It was February of 2008. And I told my wife, I said, honey, we have to start implementing this concept in our life. And so that's when I started my very first policy. I had at that time, February of 2008, I had $984,711 in debt. That's what I owed to
Whoa.
the third party creditors, almost $1 million in debt. Now, you're probably wondering, how did you get into that amount of debt, right? Well, I had my chiropractic office or offices. I think I had 2 offices at that time. I had my house that I lived in. I had my student loans from chiropractic college. I also had a house on the Lake of the Ozarks between St. Louis and Kansas City. And obviously, if you have a house on the lake, you have to have a boat and a wave runner, right? So I'm also an airplane pilot, so I had to have my own airplane. So it didn't take me a lot to become almost $1 million in debt. Well, I was able to just to place this concept into place, and I was able to pay that debt off in 39 months, 3 years and 3 months. I didn't have to work any harder, change my cash flow, take any additional risk, or lose control. I just implemented the process, and that's what I started using. So, anyway, that's how I became right. So that's how I got introduced to it, and then I became a producer. I became a life insurance producer in 2012, March of 2012. The guy that I started my first policy with, his name is Ray. And I started my first policy, and I went to his office one day, and I was asking him some questions about my policy. He walks downstairs and he says, Brent, he says, anyway, I was going through my records and I seen here that you've referred me a total of 41 new clients. And I said, well, Ray, you've never paid me a dime for any of those, right? I kind of laughed about it. And he said, no, no, no. In all seriousness, he says, you're very good at this. He says, you're teaching, you're telling other people. He says, you should consider doing this. I said, well, how do I do it? He says, go out and get licensed and I'll help you. And that's what I did in March of 2012. I went out and got licensed. So just continued to teach the concept. I learned the concept, started teaching the concept. So I was anyway, let's see, I was in his office working, in his agency working from 2012 to 2017. And then in 2017, we went out and started our own deal at the Money Multiplier. And so now here we are, 2024. What is that, 7, 8 years later, whatever that is, right? Where it's just it's an awesome concept. We're very fortunate, of course. I mean, I always tell my wife sometimes, I say, man, aren't we lucky? And my wife always says, yeah, honey, we're lucky. The harder we work, the luckier we get. That's her thing, because we do. We bust our ass and we work hard at this. We're traveling all around the country. We're teaching and speaking on the event. We're doing podcasts like this, live virtual Zoom calls, webinars, on stage, presentation. I mean, I was teaching at 55 to 70 live events a year prior to the pandemic. Then the pandemic came and everything just went to Zoom and virtual, right? But now all the live events are starting to come back. I was just in San Diego last week. I had a couple of guys on our team in Arizona, one in Arizona, one in LA last week. I'm going to St. Louis a week from today to teach there. So we're all over the country teaching it. The one thing you mentioned earlier, Chris Naugle, who's on our team. So actually, Chris and I, all right. So anyway, Chris and I wrote this book called Mapping Out the Millionaire Mystery. I'm happy to send it to your listeners, an ebook version of it if they want to. Just send me an email. And then my daughter too is very active in the business, which is great to have your kid in it too. She's 24 years old. So my daughter has a podcast called the Money Multiplier podcast, wherever you follow your podcast. There's one episode, she records an episode every week. And she has over 100 episodes. She's real active in the whole infinite banking the whole infinite banking community, as far as the Nelson Nash authorized infinite banking practitioners. She does, kind of a lot in there. She mentors a lot of the students, the infinite banking students that come along, right? As far as new agents that want to become, mentors and authorized practitioners. So yeah, man, she's doing very good. She's kind of like me. She eats, breathes, and lives this stuff.
Man, that's great. I mean, honestly, what a great story just from start to finish on where you started, to where you guys are now with the Money Multiplier. Again, I've been following you guys, and it's remarkable the growth that you guys have. I want to take a step back. I want to ask you, when you were at this chiropractic event and you didn't take action the way that your buddies did at the time, right? I'm curious to know, was it because you got the book and you didn't read it? Was it because you were timid? Was it because you didn't believe that it was too good to be true? Like, what was your take at that time? And what do you see the majority of some of your clients, maybe when they first show up, they have that initial hesitation or timidness? How do you help them get over that, from maybe your personal experience?
Yeah, no, great question. And yeah, that happens. But I think the main thing you got to remember is this is an outside of the box concept. This is not normal stuff that people do with money. It's not what your parents taught you about money, your grandparents. It's not what your friends, your colleagues, or coworkers are doing. It's not what your CPA is going to tell you to do, your accountant, your financial advisor, because they don't know. They know traditional stuff. Oh, okay, let's put our money in a 401k, an IRA, a qualified plan. Let's buy stocks and bonds and all of that stuff and build, wealth that way. They don't know about this concept. So a couple things for me. I mean, okay, the very first time I saw it, I said, it looks good, but it seems too good to be true. There's got to be a catch. There's something this guy's not telling me that I'm going to find out down the road. Well, let me just tell you, there is no catch whatsoever. This thing is stupid, stupid simple. All you do is you put money into the policy. How much do you put in? You decide the amount. You decide the amount to put in. I have over 13,000 clients in every state of the country. I've never told one of them how much money to put into their policy. We've got people that put in $100 a month, and I think our largest client puts in $540,000 a month, right? We don't tell people how much to put in. The important thing is just to get started. Get started. In other words, let's say you want to learn how to swim. You have to get in the pool in order to learn how to swim, right? So I'm not asking you to jump into the ocean on your first day you put on a pair of swim trunks, but get in the baby end, put on the little floaties on your arm. Everything will be fine, right? Just get your feet wet and kind of see what this is all about, right? So I think for me, it was like, it seems too good to be true. Now that comes back to haunt me, Nolan, because a lot of my clients, when they first hear about us, or people that come across us, they're like, okay, what's the catch? Or maybe they don't go all the way through with the policy because they think there's some kind of catch. There's not a catch. I'm telling you, there's zero, zero, zero catch. And if you don't believe me, and if you don't want to work with me or you, go do your own research, find somebody out there that you connect with and click with, and work this concept with them, because there's no other vehicle on this planet that has these features and benefits that allows you to do this, that allows you to build, keep, and create wealth in this manner. And there's no way you can lose. You can't lose in a whole life policy in a mutual company that pays dividends. The only risk factor in this concept is you. That's right. How you use the policy. The insurance companies are contractually obligated to do what they say, right? So you are the risk factor. You are the only one that can screw this up. There is nobody on this planet that has ever lost money in a whole life policy in a mutual company that pays dividends. It's not possible, because every insurance company that we work with, and I work with some of the same ones that you work with, I'm sure, not knowing who you work with, but I'm sure I work with about a half dozen different companies, and they're mutual companies. They pay dividends, right? They have a contract, and on the contract, it has two columns, doesn't it? It has a guaranteed column and a non-guaranteed column. The guaranteed column is the worst the contract can ever perform. That's the worst that it can ever be, is what the guaranteed side is of the contract. Now, most contracts perform on the right-hand side, the non-guaranteed side. The only thing between guaranteed and non-guaranteed is the dividends. And the dividends are a projection of what they're going to be in the future. Well, some years they're a little less, some years they're a little more. But all the insurance companies that I've worked with over the years, they're pretty much spot on. Yeah, there might be a year where it's a little lower, a little higher, but it's all pretty spot on, close enough for government work, right? I mean, the numbers are pretty close, right? So that's the only thing we don't know. But if you really want to know how your policy is performing, every year, which I suggest everybody does, and every agency should be doing this for their client, in my opinion, is you get what we call an in-force illustration. And you look at that in-force illustration and you compare that illustration to the first illustration that you got when you started the policy, and you see how well did it do, right? So again, guaranteed growth, and you're leaving a legacy for the family. And then even to go, okay, and again, Nolan, I know I'm getting off track here a little bit, but let's just think about what this is. This is a life insurance policy. And people will tell you, the Dave Ramseys of the world, the Susie Ormans, oh, you don't need a whole life policy, buy term and invest the difference. Well, how many people do you know that are actually investing the difference? And here Dave
That's right.
Ramsey is telling you this, but Dave doesn't know. He just doesn't know what the vehicle is. And then, not to mention, Dave has a big interest in a company called Zander Insurance, which is term insurance, but nobody ever mentions
That's
that, right?
right. That's right.
But again, I'm not trying to knock Dave. Dave does good at what he does, until maybe you get out of debt, and then he doesn't have any answers for you after that. But do your own due diligence, do your own research. This book, Becoming Your Own Banker by R. Nelson Nash, this is a book that everybody needs to add to their wealth building library. You need that book in your life. And if you don't like the book, or if you don't like reading, there's also 2 hours of audio that you could get that go along with the book, so you can listen to it instead, right? So it's a total game changer when it comes to your financial life. So anyway, the whole concept, right, of the infinite banking, all the concept, it was not invented by Nelson Nash. He didn't create whole life insurance, right? It's not, okay. The concept has been around for over 250 years. If you go and research the Rockefellers, the Rothschilds, the Morgans, the Stanleys, the Barclays, go look and see how Walt Disney built Disneyland, how Ray Kroc funded McDonald's, right? Go look and see how Pampered Chef got started before Warren Buffett bought Pampered Chef, right? This is what they did. This is the vehicle that they used to build, keep, and create wealth. Go read the book called Second Chance by Robert Kiyosaki. Right. So Robert Kiyosaki's famous for a book. It's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but he also wrote a book called Second Chance. Go read. This is exactly what we teach, is what Robert Kiyosaki talks about in that book.
Yep.
The problem with the book that Robert Kiyosaki wrote, talking about the concept, is he makes it too complicated to understand, and people just read right through it and don't do anything. Same thing with Tony Robbins, Money, Master the Game. I think it's in chapter 5.3 or 5.4 of that book. This is exactly what Tony Robbins talks about. So all we're going to do is what the rich have been doing for over 200 years. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. I'm not going to go create something new. I'm just going to take the tools that they've been using, and we're going to implement it in our own life. That's all we're doing.
I love it. I think you're nailing it on the head, where the wealthiest people in the world own debts, own the collateral, and own the cash flow. That's what you're doing. You're able to purchase these assets that would have otherwise, interest, collateral, all that would have been going to somebody else. You're now in control of all of it. A question that I have for you too, because there's a lot of noise right now on the internet. You have a lot of people that talk about, oh, why would I do a whole life policy when I can do an index universal life policy, an IUL?
Yeah.
There's a ton of noise, and I'm a whole life advocate the same way that you are. I don't mess with any of the hybrid products. Can you go into maybe not so much combat that objection or whatever about, oh, look at these projections, look what they're projecting, which that's the kicker. It is a projection. It's not guaranteed. But can you go into a little bit more detail about the differences between the whole life versus the IUL, and why whole life is tried and true compared to any other hybrid product?
Yeah, well, anyway, yes, and I get that a lot. We get that a lot in the industry. Let's do an IUL, an Index Universal Life. Well, look, the thing I could do if I wanted to is I could sell you an IUL product, and I would make a great commission off of it, but I would never, ever, I would never sell you an IUL, because I would never buy one myself. Okay. I have 28 whole life policies as we speak right here today. Wow. And I buy at least one a year or one every other year. My 24-year-old daughter, I think she has 9 or 10, maybe 11 now. And she buys at least one a year, every other year or whatnot, right? Because as life goes on, and as Nelson Nash says on page 48 of this book, premium and income should equal.
That's right.
Every payment you make is a deposit into somebody else's account. You want that money going into your own account where you control it. Okay. So IUL, lots of people talk about IUL because they're like, look at this on the paper illustration of an IUL, because it can show some awesome numbers, right? Now, if you ever want to truly dissect an IUL policy, I don't think there's anybody on the planet that does it better than a guy named Clay Summers, and he works at the home office for One America, which is located in Indianapolis. You know, it's an insurance company that we write business with. Clay Summers has been with One America in the home office for over 40 years. Clay Summers has this presentation, and I don't think he shares it with just the general public, but he'll share it with other agents and producers. It's called Whole Life versus IUL. And Clay Summers breaks it down better than anyone I've ever seen. I mean, he's just a rock star anyway when it comes to whole life, and he has several different presentations out there. But so anyway, just to give you the high level answer of an IUL, here's the thing you got to take note in an IUL. And anyway, not to mention that if I ever put the words index universal life and I connected it with becoming your own banker, the infinite banking concept, I think Nelson would probably climb out of his grave and come and probably strangle me around the neck.
That's right. That's right.
Or anybody for that matter. Here's the thing that I've learned about IULs and what I see, because I talk to people every day about this concept. And I have talked to people, lots of people that have taken a bloodbath in their IULs. They've just taken a bloodbath. And I say a bloodbath, meaning where they've lost most or sometimes everything in the IUL. Because in an IUL, and I challenge any of you that have IULs to do this, I challenge you to get your agent that is saying IUL, IUL to show you this. Have them show you the illustration. Key point, every page of the illustration, not just the pages they want to show you, every single page of the illustration. Like if that illustration says page 1 of 92 or whatever it is, you want to see all 92 pages of that illustration. On the left-hand side of that illustration, you will see an IUL product that as you get older, your cash value, your loan availability, and your death benefit can go to zero. You can lose every single dollar that you put into the IUL. I know you hear people say, well, that's impossible. There's a floor. That's bullcrap. Go look at the illustration. I mean, yeah, there is a floor. The floor is zero on every single column, right? That's the floor is zero.
That's right.
Because what happens is the cost of insurance cannot keep up with the policy and the age. So now, if there's somebody that is totally fine with stocking more and more and more money every year in an IUL and paying higher and higher and higher premiums, then it may not be a bad thing. But how many people do you know that are going to say, hey, I guarantee no questions asked, I want to dump more and more and more money in my IUL as I get older? No, it doesn't happen. People don't do that, right? So the problem is that you can lose every bit. And then so the other big thing is that you got to remember, I is for what? Index. Index means that it's tied just to the market. So typically, as the market does better, your IUL policy will do better. And I know right now we're kind of riding a little bit of high on the market, but do you think that's going to last? I mean, honestly, no, it's going to come down. It's going to come down. I mean, just go back through the whole history of the market, and not to mention average rates of return. See, people tend to as far as financial experts, they try to, what I call the word swindle or hoodwink you into paying attention to average rates of return. There's average rate of return, and then there's actual rate of return. Average rate of return means crap. It doesn't matter what the average rate of return is. It only matters your actual rate of return. How much, all right, so how much was there when you started? And how much is there when you're getting out? That is your actual rate of return, right? And I talk about that in the book that I wrote, Mapping Out the Millionaire Mystery. I have a couple pages on average versus actual rate of return. Well, IULs, they want you to look at the average rate of return, which means absolutely nothing. And then probably the other thing, which I think is one of the most important, is that a whole life policy in a mutual company that pays dividends, it is not an investment. It is not an investment.
That's right.
It is a process. A lot of people think it's an investment because it goes up in value. Well, the true definition of an investment is something that can go up in value and something that can decrease or come down in value, right? An IUL is like an investment. It can go up, but it can go down. How far can it go down? It can go all the way down to zero, especially if you're not willing to dump more and more and more money into it. Now, yeah, absolutely. The IUL may work fine if you're willing to dump all that extra cash into it as you get older. And as people get older, they don't want to put more cash into stuff. They usually want to put less into stuff because maybe they don't have the income that they previously had. So here's what I tell people. If you're really sold on this IUL thing and you want an IUL, now I will tell you, Nolan, and again, I think with you said you've watched a lot of my stuff. There's a lot of things that we have a lot of content on our website, or either if or the thing is you can send me an email and I'll send you different as far as just things that we did comparing whole life and IUL, different as far as video and audio, content, where we have in our additional resources comparing the two. But I tell people, I say, look, if you really, really, really want an IUL, then the thing you want to do is put your money in a whole life policy first, and then go out and take a loan from the whole life policy, or actually the general fund of the insurance companies where we're taking the loan, and now go invest in an IUL. Same way you would invest in a stock, a bond, like cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, a piece of real estate, whatever it is, antique cars, whatever you like investing in, it's an investment. It could go up and it could go down. So I like the guarantees. I want the guarantees because I can make all those investments. I'm okay making those, and I make some of them. I make some of those. I do a lot of real estate. I do a lot of lending, right? So I do that, but my money goes through the policy first. And then from the policy, I use that money to go out and make the investments or purchase assets or pay off debt and expense for that matter.
I think that's a great way of putting it, because when I speak with my own clients, the solution is not the policy, it's what you do with policy loans. It's controlling cash flows, it's owning collateral, it's owning debts, versus being able to go and maybe get a investing higher rate of return inside of a policy. I tell people, if you like the same way, if you want to go and invest in something, invest in it. Don't use a life insurance policy to go and try and get a return in the market. The focus needs to be on using this policy as your warehouse for capital before you go and deploy it into investments that you know that you like and the deals that you want to do. That's been my at least observation in the way that I've studied Nelson Nash in the book.
Warehouse of capital, what you just said, right?
That's
so
it.
Anyway, and anyway, right here's another book Nelson Nash wrote, right? Called Building Your Warehouse of Wealth. Where are you going to store your wealth? Would you rather store it in your own banking system, or would you rather store it in somebody else's banking system, such as, Charles Schwab or Wells Fargo or Chase? You want to store your wealth in your own banking system where there are no profit holders and shareholders. You own the policy. You own the policy contract. So you're the one receiving all the profits and the dividends, and not other people.
Man, you nailed it. And so as we're kind of getting to the end here, Brent, I wanted to just one more question, ask you, if someone is interested to learn more about you, again, you are the Money Multiplier, guys. You guys have an amazing following on social media. What can somebody do? And we'll have these in our notes of this episode, but what can somebody do, and how can they reach out to you in order to set up a policy designed the way Nelson Nash and the guys that are kind of, not like you said, the inventors, but more of like the discoverers of this concept?
Yeah, absolutely right. Well, our website is www.themoneymultiplier.com. So THE, the word moneymultiplier.com. The thing you can do is you can send me an email, Brent, B-R-E-N-T, Brent at themoneymultiplier.com as well. And then for all of your listeners that want this ebook, I'll send you the ebook version of Mapping Out the Millionaire Mystery. Just send me an email and I'm happy to send that to you.
Man, that's awesome. And again, this is Brent Kesler, guys, with the Money Multiplier. He's just, I mean, truly a remarkable gentleman and a truly amazing insight too. So, Brent, I really genuinely appreciate you being on our show today. This will thing get blasted out. I'm sure you'll be receiving some a lot of fan mail and exciting people in your inbox here sometime soon. So, thanks so much again, Brent. Really appreciate your time.
All right, Nolan, thank you. I'm happy to be on. So thank you for allowing me to share today.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have to do part 2 here sometime soon.
Let's do it, man. Let me know.
Awesome. Thank you.